How fat can pigs and primates be? Where's the competition for the title of the plumpest bear held? What animal is the fattest, and why is it dangerous to overfeed pets? Now you'll learn that. In this episode, I'll show you the record thickest animals caught on camera. It's no secret that pigs and boars are large and well-fed animals. But even among them, there are really huge and fat creatures that have broken all possible records. Thus, the fattest pig in history is considered to be Old Slot. To be more precise, it's a Gloucestershire boar that lived in the English country of Cheshire on the farm of a certain Joseph. Not much is known about him, but according to some sources, this giant reached almost 5 feet in height and weighed 1,400 pounds. At the same time, some believe that the boar weighed several tons. Hardly that much, of course, but he was definitely very big and fat. Another record-breaking boar is Big Bill, who lived in the first half of the 20th century. Literally, one photo of this giant has remained, but even that is enough to realize that he was really big. It's said that with a length of 8.9 feet, he weighed 2,552 pounds. That's a lot of weight. However, there's an explanation of that. Big Bill was specially fattened to the max and raised big to be presented as an example of the best work of the breeders of the 20th century. As for female pigs, Chun Chun from China has won everyone over. This pig was born in 1999 and lived for 4 years, during which she managed to gain about 1,984 pounds at a length of 8.2 feet. Chun Chun was eventually stuffed so that no one would forget how big she was. The next record holder in this selection also comes from China, and it's a big panda. Everyone knows that these black and white bears are really plump. They're literally all over the place, fat and soft, but they don't actually weigh as much as you might think. These creatures weigh about 100 pounds, and this is considered more or less normal. So it's no surprise that the staff at the Taipei Zoo in Taiwan sounded the alarm when they weighed Wanzai, which is the name of a female who had gained up to 253 pounds. That made her one of the fattest pandas in captivity. By the way, her sister Wanbao also gained weight. They were both put on a diet. If they hadn't, the pandas could have developed heart problems. But what does a panda diet that eats bamboo even look like? Is bamboo a high-calorie food? Hardly, but as you can see, pandas can get fat because of it. Now the sisters eat corn, steamed bread, and soybeans. As for the ultimate record, it was set by they say he weighed 352.7 pounds. This is literally the limit for a big panda. With this weight, it's very difficult to even move around. I hope this bear has lost weight. Godzilla. By this name, we know the mutant from Japanese movies and comics, and that's the name of a monkey from Thailand who became famous for being overweight a few years ago. This tame monkey lived in a food market and ate for 10, literally. She was constantly being fed by vendors, shoppers, and tourists. When no one gave food, Godzilla himself went to catch goodies, digging through trash cans, and always found something to eat. The rest of the time, he preferred to sit and move as little as possible. As a result, the monkey got very fat. Tourists liked such a chubby monkey. They often took pictures with it. But take it from me, Godzilla himself was bad. Fortunately, the situation was recognized in time by animal advocates who took the monkey to a special camp for slimming animals. There, Godzilla was put on a strict diet. As is often the case with us humans, at first everything went slowly, and Godzilla didn't like the changes. It snapped at people and freaked out when she was given healthy food instead of fast food. But gradually, she got involved, began to eat a healthy diet, exercise, go to aerobics, and so on. As a result, from 20 pounds, she lost to 12 pounds. However, the ending of this story is not so happy. They say that when Godzilla returned to the market, she came back to her old habits, regained weight, and soon died due to health problems. But let's not be sad. What about contests? What kind of competitions do you like? Let me know in the comments. In Alaska, for example, their favorite contest is to determine the fattest bear. And I'm not kidding, In the local national park of Katmai, the annual Fat Bear Week is held, according to the results of which web users determine the chubbiest bear. In 2023, it was a female bear named Grazer, number 128. At the moment, she's considered the fattest bear in North America and maybe the whole world. Since Grazer is a wild bear, it's extremely difficult to weigh her, so we have to determine her weight by eye. Scientists say that her weight is about 705 to 793 pounds. At the same time, Grazer cannot be called a sluggish fatty. Quite the opposite, she's one of the most dominant females in the national park. She's an excellent fisherman. She manages to catch fish in almost all parts of the river, both at the mouth and waterfalls. She uses different techniques. The bear can both chase salmon and patiently collect exhausted and half-dead fish after spawning. By hunting like this, Grazer has gained even more weight to hibernate. Now the champion is asleep, and her record-breaking pounds will be burned off during hibernation, just like in other bears. Do you think she'll be able to regain the weight and defend the championship title of the main fat lady next year? In fact, there's nothing wrong with fat bears. Quite the opposite. The fatter a bear is, the easier it will endure hibernation when it eats nothing. That's why bears need to gain weight. But this rule doesn't work, for example, with dogs. Not so long ago, people came across a dog that was so fat it was described as "there is no such thing as obesity." The obese dog was found in Nizhny Novgorod. When he was weighed, everyone was shocked. The big guy weighed 220 pounds. Even many wolves don't weigh so much. Apparently, the previous owners had fattened the dog and lost control, and then simply decided to put him on the street. Such an attitude to the dog was inhuman twice, and the volunteers decided to correct this misunderstanding. They named the dog Kruggets. They quickly took care of him because things were bad. The dog could hardly move and couldn't even lift his paw or stand up by himself. Due to the lack of mobility, Kruggets developed bed sores, his internal organs and joint ligaments suffered, and his metabolism slowed down a lot. Fortunately, thanks to diet and therapy, Kruggets lost as much as 30 pounds very quickly. This is already a great success, but it's still not enough. The dog needs to lose at least another 20 pounds so the volunteers and veterinarians can begin the next stage of the rescue. Let's hope they succeed. Now it's the cat's turn. Usually among these fluffy creatures, you can find more fat creatures than among dogs. Many people like fatter cats. They're nice to cuddle. They look cute and all that. And I don't see anything wrong with slightly chubby cats that are at a healthy weight, but this one is clearly over the top. This cat's name is Liznia. The name's funny, but the situation's not. It's not known exactly how much the cat weighs. As far as I'm concerned, it's about 33 pounds, if not more. It may even be the fattest cat in history. A couple of years ago, the cat was very popular on the internet, and many people noticed a connection. They believe that Liznia's owners are purposely overfeeding the cat for the sake of likes and hype. The owners themselves say this is not the case, that the cat gained weight after pregnancy and spaying. Can a cat get that big after pregnancy? Doesn't that sound suspicious to you? Maybe the cat was really overfed to make it different from the millions of other cats and gain popularity. As far as I'm concerned, anything's possible. Besides, fat animals are really popular online and offline, and not only cats or dogs but also seals. Here is just one such puffy animal. Her name is Yuki, and many people consider her the fattest seal on the planet, or at least the fattest ringed seal. Yuki lives at the Osaka Aquarium, Kaiyukan, and I bet the management of the aquarium's happy about it. After all, many people come here just to gaze at the funny little puffball. According to the staff of the oceanarium, visitors are delighted when they meet a chubby seal. In general, ringed seals are characterized by a rather oblong body and not the greatest weight. The average individual weighs up to 154 pounds. Do you think Yuki weighs more? Maybe her weight is even more than 200 pounds. Surprisingly, no. In fact, Yuki's weight is about 110 pounds. It's just that her body length is not impressive, which makes the seal look chubby. And she loves to eat. She eats at least 6.5 pounds of fresh fish every day to keep in shape. Squirrel. What you wouldn't expect to be overweight are these rodents. As a rule, squirrels are slim and trim. It's logical they need to climb trees, quickly escape from predators, and just run fast to have time to stock up on nuts as much as possible. As it turns out, there are also fat animals among these cute creatures. Like this one. An Ohio woman recently captured a video of one of the fattest squirrels on the planet. Just check out how huge it is. And by the way, the pumpkin she bit into was her handiwork, or rather that of her teeth. The woman even thought that the squirrel was pregnant, not fat, but it's not likely. The situation here is roughly similar to bears. Squirrels do not hibernate, however it's logical that in the winter food becomes scarce. That's why squirrels stock up on provisions before winter. They fill hollow trees with nuts, acorns, cones, seeds, and so on. They don't forget to gain weight. The fatter the squirrel is, the easier it will last through the winter. Apparently, this fat squirrel from Ohio is just very well prepared for winter. Hippopotamus. No surprises there. Hippos are not what you would call trim animals. They all look like fat creatures. However, you cannot laugh at them. Hippos are extremely dangerous and aggressive and can easily kill anyone. But if the hippo is too fat, it's not so menacing. This footage is believed to show the fattest hippo in decades. His belly was practically dragging on the ground, and there was a huge amount of fat folds. It's not known exactly how much this giant weighed. There's little information about him. If hippos usually weigh 1.5 or 2 tons, then this big guy probably weighed 3 tons or even more. People who worked with him said that everything was due to the low activity of the animal. He lived in a cramped enclosure where he couldn't even use the pool to swim normally. Due to obesity, it was difficult for the hippo to climb up and down the steps into the pool. His whole life was reduced to eating and sleeping, and that's why he got so fat. Leo. We don't have a hippo's neighbor in Africa next, as you might think. Leo is the hamster's nickname. This chubby one, it's one of the fattest hamsters I've ever seen. Apparently, Leo is a Syrian hamster. These are fairly large rodents that can weigh up to 10.6 ounces. The author of the video didn't say how much his pet weighed, but he may have weighed even more, or maybe he was just plump. And here's another rodent pet. He looks cute. However, there's something terrible behind that cuteness: obesity. This hamster is so fat that he can't even roll over on his own. It's painful to imagine what would have been like if he had done that in his cage without his owners. He could have ended up sitting like that all day long. We've already taken a look at many fat animals today, from squirrels and pets to hippos and pandas. But what about birds? They can be fat too. If you don't believe us, the kakapo will change your mind. It's not any particular bird, but an entire species of parrot from New Zealand. In fact, all kakapos can be described as fat, or at least heavy creatures. This parrot is so heavy that it can't even fly. In fact, it's the only non-flying parrot alive today. It's also the heaviest parrot species in the world. With a body length of 24 inches, kakapo weighs from 2.2 to 8.8 pounds. They can't take off with such dimensions, but what are their wings for? For equilibrium. They use them to keep their balance when jumping from trees or any elevations. For this reason, the wing of the parrot are not as rigid as those of flying parrots. The kakapo's main trait is its inability to fly, which is its own curse. In the past, kakapos were hunted by rats, cats, possums, stoats, and other predators that Europeans brought to New Zealand. The kakapo was also actively hunted by humans. As a result, the unique parrot is now on the verge of total extinction. It takes a lot of effort to see a kakapo, as there are not many of these birds left. However, you don't have to try very hard to see pigeons. You may have seen these birds even today, but it's unlikely that you saw fat pigeons. In fact, have you ever noticed them? I don't think so. There are some. They look something like this, or like this, or something like that. If the pigeon is domestic, then everything is clear. The owners could simply overfeed their pet. In the case of wild pigeons, everything's not so simple. It's almost impossible to see them, but there is an explanation to this. Firstly, pigeons in general are not prone to obesity and try to keep an eye on their weight to be able to escape danger. Secondly, fat pigeons quickly fall victim to birds of prey because they're too clumsy. Do you know which animal is considered the fattest in principle? More specifically, which animal has the highest percentage of body fat? If you were thinking of a blue whale, you guessed it. These animals are the largest and heaviest in the entire world. They have some of the largest organs on the planet in history, so it makes sense that they have a lot of fat as well. To be exact, on average about 35% of a blue whale's mass is represented by fat. But in some periods, the fat content can be as high as 50%. Considering that blue whales can weigh over 100 tons, just imagine how much fat they can have in them. Now it's clear why whales were hunted so often in the past. Among other things, whalers were interested in the fat of these animals to sell it and make a lot of money. For the blue whales themselves, this fat content is important to survive in cold waters, as well as to do without food when weight gain is complete. The Amazon is an amazing place that's literally teeming with a variety of animals. You'll see these and other of the Amazon's rarest and most unusual animals. Mysterious creature. In the depths of the thick Amazon jungle, a group of explorers set out on an expedition, hoping to discover new secrets of nature. They were burning with the desire to discover an unknown creature and learn more about the world around us. One day, while traveling, the explorers came across a very strange phenomenon. In the shade of dense vegetation, they noticed a silhouette desperately clinging to a tree. As they got closer, they were surprised to find a creature very different from anything they'd seen before. The creature was about the same height as the explorers, but its body was covered with smooth, shiny skin of an unusual light blue hue. It stood on two legs and had two five-fingered hands, very similar to human hands. Its eyes were large and marvelously beautiful, with shades of green and purple. None of the group of scientists could imagine how such a creature could have ended up in the Amazon jungle. However, instead of fear or uncertainty, they felt only deep curiosity and a desire to learn more about their unusual neighbor. It's not known how this story ended, but I personally think that such a picture, as well as the story, may very well be real. We all know about the Amazon region and the various creatures that live there. What do you think about it? Is the picture real as well as the story, or is it nothing more than someone's fiction? Common vampire bat. Desmodus, as well as big bloodsucker. These are the alternative names scientists have given to this uncommon, or wait a minute, just the opposite, common vampire. In captivity, this bloodsucker exists for about 12 years, which is quite a long time if you take into account its lifestyle. It hunts exclusively at night. It would be strange if it were otherwise. So when it flies hunting, it tries to locate potential prey. It could be anyone. The main thing is that the target is large enough, appetizing, and at the same time asleep. When such an object for sucking blood is found, the common vampire bat lands on its body or sits down next to it and climbs up on a foot. In its nasal passage, there's a sensitive thermal receptor, which allows it to easily determine the ideal place for a bite. Most often, it's some point on the neck or in the ear area where there are lots of capillaries. However, the common vampire bat does not bite its target immediately, as in some horror movies. First, it moistens the area with its saliva. In 10 to 15 minutes, the area will no longer be felt by the prey. There will be an effect similar to anesthesia. Thus, the prey will not wake up and will not prevent the vampire from saturating itself with blood. The next stage is the cleansing of the area. It's important to drink clean blood, not eat some dirty hairs or wool. The big bloodsucker chews off the wool in the place of the bite and makes a small cut with its sharp incisors, from which the blood starts to ooze abundantly. The common vampire bat puts a folded tongue to the wound, and the blood flows into the animal's mouth without clotting. It takes about half an hour to satiate, during which time the vampire drinks about 2 ounces of blood, 1.5 times its own weight. Southern Temendua. And this mammal is from the anteater family, although personally it reminds me more of a bear. The body length of this beautiful creature usually does not exceed 35 inches. Its tail reaches 20 inches in length, and it weighs 9 to 11 pounds. It seems that such strange size will not allow the animal to lead a particularly active lifestyle, but this is not so. The creature has learned to perform such tricks on trees that it can be included in some acrobatics team. And all this despite the fact that apart from ants and termites, the Southern Temendua doesn't eat anything. Yes, sometimes wild bees can be eaten by it, but no more. However, when you have a mouth the diameter of a pencil, you can't eat anything bigger than a bug. But the harness-shaped, 16-inch long tongue is a real gift of God for eating the mentioned arthropods. Give this mammal just one day, and it will eliminate at least 9,000 ants. And that's despite the fact that this four-legged mammal doesn't eat just ants. Some species can attack it, and it will be difficult for the Southern Temendua to fight back. But don't think that this mammal is weak and can do nothing but tricks on trees. That's not so. Behind its cute appearance, there's a real power in the form of 4-inch-long claws, with which it easily opens up termite mounds like tin cans. Other inhabitants of the area see this very well, and for this reason do not risk attacking the anteater. If it uses its claws so easily and opens up termite mounds, then it will not be difficult for it to inflict serious injuries on them. Therefore, no one wants to mess with the southern tamandua. Bald Aukari. This is the name of a New World primate species from the Pithidicae family, the main distinguishing feature of which is a red, hairless face. It's no coincidence that locals constantly joke that a bald Aukari is a sunburned tourist. These primates live in South America in the Amazon River basin. Their range includes rainforests in Brazil and Colombia. These creatures can definitely be considered socially adapted. They constantly form groups that can total from 6 to 30 individuals. They feed on fruit, but sometimes they can also eat seeds or insects. The primates with an unusual appearance live near water where there's dense vegetation. They come down to the ground quite rarely, either when they have problems with food above or if they want to pick up some fallen fruit after the rainy season. By the way, we quickly skipped the part with the unusual coloration of their face, didn't we? Do you know what caused it? The thing is that the epidermis of their face has no pigment, but the capillary network can be perfectly seen through it. It's the blood vessels that give the bald Aukari such incredible coloration. Bushmaster. The alternative name for this snake is surucucu. It's the largest representative of South America venomous snakes of the viper's family. Fortunately for people, there were not so many contacts with the bushmaster in history. The fact is that the snake mostly lives where there are almost no people. At the same time, it's characterized by a solitary lifestyle. However, no one and nothing can escape from the sensitive gaze of people. The Aborigines said that these creeping creatures are definitely worth being wary of. Growing up to 13 feet in length and having several venomous teeth up to 1.5 inches long, the snake knows no fear. Despite this, it doesn't get into a fight, but instead prefers thoughtful and careful tactics. Whenever it sticks out its tongue, it collects odors from the air, leaves, and soil. The tongue transmits this chemical information to sensory organs located on the snake's head. It's called the Jacobson's organ, and then the data goes to the brain. The snake learns who passed here and how long ago they did it. It can easily find them if it wants to. Not a single animal or any other poor creature appetizing to the bushmaster will go unpunished. However, if the prey has passed here long ago, running after it is a bad idea. So Surucucu begins to wait. The snake's patience is incredible, so much so that it can wait in one position for days or even a week. At this point, it will spend extremely little energy. Amazonian umbrella bird. The males of this species are considered one of the largest passerines in all of South America. They can weigh up to 21 ounces and grow up to 22 inches in length. If any of you want to encounter this beautiful bird, you should know that it does not go below 2,625 feet above sea level. It's not difficult to find the bird because it has a beautiful black plumage and a hairstyle that would be the envy of Elvis Presley himself. However, the main feature of the Amazonian umbrella bird is undoubtedly this strange thing sticking straight out of its neck. In fact, it's far from being a simple outgrowth, but a full-fledged throat sac growing up to 14 inches in length. It's not difficult to guess that because of such a large thing, the Amazonian umbrella bird is not very fond of flying. Mostly, it gets to the point it needs and travels on foot. These birds try their best to remain hidden and unnoticed by others, silently eating fruit, bugs, spiders, lizards, and other little creatures that the jungle sends and gives them. However, when Amazonian umbrella birds reach the mating season, they no longer hide their location. On the contrary, they try to tell the whole world where they are at the moment. And first of all, of course, they call females. Males make a piercing screech, which is something between a lion's roar and a lamb's bleat. Golden poison frog. And this frog that's about to be discussed, I would call a total overabundance of poison. Why? Well, the fact is that one touch is enough to kill 250 adults. At the same time, the frog is very hard to find. Yes, it's bright yellow, but it's also only 0.7 to 1.5 inches long. Such a tiny body contains a full-fledged nerve poison called batrachotoxin, the lethal dose of which for humans is only 2 micrograms. And the frog can contain a whole milligram of poison, that is 500 lethal doses. A human accidentally touched its skin, deadly poisoning is assured. Why is it so poisonous? The main version is that the frog gets poison from local toxic insects that it feeds on. From the amazing animals of the Amazon River, let's move on to incredible creatures from around the world. Next, I'll tell you about unknown mystical creature encounters. The Beast of Gavaudan. Stories related to this creature date back to the 18th century, when the inhabitants of the French region of Gavaudan were terrorized by a mysterious and terrifying creature. A certain animal, vaguely similar to a wolf, made repeated attacks on people and their livestock, took pets with it, and practically kept out of everybody's sight. It did it insanely deftly and skillfully, remaining anonymous. It's because of this that, to this day, no one can state with certainty what it was. Some are certain that the atrocities were carried out by someone like a wolf. Others are certain that comparisons to ordinary creatures are inappropriate, since something paranormal was involved in the evil deeds. It's up to you what to believe, but I still suggest stopping on a version with a wolf, because most of the witnesses talk about it. The Beast of Gavaudan was described as a creature resembling this predator and surpassing it in size. It had an elongated muzzle, a broad chest, and a long tail ending in a switch. It was yellowish, had a strip of dark fur on its back, and long fangs could be seen from its mouth. Eyewitnesses described the animal's running as light and graceful. The main red rag of this beast was always the target's head. When it saw its opponent, it was as if something inside it clicked, and the beast could no longer restrain itself. It swelled in size, became more vicious, and rushed at its prey, jumping onto its face and at times grasping it right in flight. The number of preys varies, but the most likely version is that the beast carried out a total of 230 attacks. The beast's extraordinary bloodthirstiness, coupled with its obvious intelligence, inspired terror in the peasants of Gavaudan. Some even thought they were dealing with a werewolf. Fortunately, people decided not to sit still and took matters into their own hands. In 1765, they gathered the first group of volunteers who went in search of the bloodthirsty wolf. According to eyewitnesses, the soldiers found the beast at the most opportune moment when the predator was eating another batch of animals. But the wolf quickly spotted the armed men and managed to escape, though they managed to shoot it. Everything was quiet and smooth for a while. People even began to think that the wolf was done, but in less than a year, the attacks resumed. It was necessary to raid on the beast again, and so in 1767, one of the hunters finally succeeded in shooting the Beast of Gavaudan. The body of the animal was carried through the city, then stuffed and given to the king. The chupacabra, or someone very similar to it? According to zoologists, animals did not know how to attack someone out of interest. They do so only to protect themselves, their territory, lair, or to get food. Nevertheless, sometimes mysterious events occur with large number of dead cattle or birds. And now I'll tell you about one of them. The action took place not long ago in Russia, 1993, Moscow. One family lived a completely ordinary, quiet, and unremarkable life. They peacefully existed and did what they loved, raising cattle. All kinds of chickens, turkeys, guinea fowl, and others. The farm had almost 60 cattle. One morning, the owner got up after a sleepless night and went to do ordinary things, when suddenly she was literally paralyzed with horror. At dawn, she found more than 50 lifeless bodies of its domestic animals. Some had died of breathing problems, others had been eaten alive. And it would be understandable if someone broke into their house and did such a crime, but the fact that the lock on the door was hanging and it wasn't touched raised questions. After exploring the area, people realized how their house had been broken into. They found a tunnel behind the property. That's probably where the evil creature had gotten in. But now the residents had a far more puzzling and disturbing question. Who or what could have done this? The tunnel was gigantic, which meant it was obviously no cat or evil dog, nor did the footprints look at all like those of an ordinary creature. After the first incident, it was impossible to draw any conclusions, and people had no choice but to forget the story. But only a couple of months passed and it happened again, but with a different family of farmers. They were the ones who noticed the predator. According to them, a creature resembling the chupacabra was attacking the cattle. This creature had hungry eyes, and it was as if it had no control over itself. It ran from one animal to another, quickly killed it, and moved on. But what was the point? After all, scientists say that animals are not capable of attacking without a good reason. Or maybe it was something alien after all, something that feeds off the energy of the dead. Share your thoughts in the comments. Giant cats. We're all used to the idea that if a cat is big, it means that we're facing a tiger, a lion, a leopard, or a similar creature. Such a cat is dangerous, agile, fast, and cunning. In general, this is true, but apparently people do not know all wild feline representatives. In 2011, a unique incident happened in England. Guy was walking down the street with his dog when suddenly some huge cat attacked them. At first, the man thought he was dealing with an escaped lion, but after a closer look, he realized that this creature was completely unlike the well-known big cat. It had oddly shaped paws, a slightly elongated head, and a different body. It resembled the body of ordinary house cats, except that this giant was several times larger than they were. A little later, various sources also recorded a strange creature moving on four paws. It repeatedly tried to attack ordinary animals, and it succeeded. Nevertheless, at some point the attacks stopped and have not resumed until now. Could it be that the creature has completed its plan? Or is it preparing something on a larger scale? Who knows? Next, I'm going to talk about something completely incomprehensible and mysterious creature. Many people call it a skinwalker. It's not just an incomprehensible creature. It is exactly some kind of humanoid that puts on someone else's skin and turns into this creature. I agree, it sounds insanely weird. At least I wouldn't have believed it. But many people send in videos indicating that they have heard or even seen this very creature of which stories are told. For example, in this video, a man was standing near a fence when suddenly he heard a frightening scream. He was totally reluctant to go and check to see what it could be, but since it was already night, he needed to sleep and his cattle were resting next to him. He was forced to go and investigate. He was really surprised when he saw a skinwalker, the one that's described on the internet by various people. Luckily, skinwalkers are rather cowardly, and after the first contact with the already frightened man, the mystical creature turned into a beast and ran away, leaving behind a half-eaten wolf carcass. Well, if all of this is true, then if I were the author of this video, I'd get out of there and look for a new place to live. It's better to go somewhere far away, because in their region, apparently such cases are the norm. The next animal I'm going to talk about is scientifically called the thylacine, but many people know it as the Tasmanian tiger. Hunters gave it this name for the striped back color, although it's not a big cat but rather a wolf. There are no more Tasmanian tigers on the planet. Now the beauty of these animals can be enjoyed only on black and white footage. Nevertheless, to this day, frightening news comes in from inhabitants of devastated villages from all over the world. They say that right before their eyes, a Tasmanian tiger has eaten several healthy animals at once. All in all, I can believe this kind of thing is happening. After all, this animal lived in Australia, and this country is full of all kinds of creatures. On the other hand, people should be able to tell them apart. But everyone, as one, says that the Tasmanian tiger is to blame for what's been done. This animal has always been considered a major threat to sheep. It would sneak onto the farm in the middle of the night, like the chupacabra, do its brutal deeds quietly, like a lynx, and then quickly flee from the place. By the way, in 1830, because of this, they even created a special system of rewards for catching this monster. So in 2023, we have to do something like that? Or many people just imagined it and it wasn't a Tasmanian tiger. Although in this case, the situation would take an unexpected turn and everything would become even more complicated. Texas werewolf. As you can imagine, the story of the following creature took place directly in Texas, and more specifically, a small city called Paradise. As of 2010, fewer than 500 people live there. The territory of the city is surrounded by fields and dense woods. Everyone knows each other. In general, it feels like people just live in a common suburb where everyone has a private house. And that's what makes the story tenser because no one needs to lie here in such a case. The local farm owner used to take his cattle out to graze in the early morning and drive them back in the evening. In those places, people keep a lot of animals, and it's their main means of subsistence. The farmer was really shocked when he saw a torn cow not far away. Yes, there are coyotes in those places, and everyone knows it, but something in the back of his mind told him it was the work of someone else. He armed himself and went in search of the predator. After walking only 1,000 feet, he saw a huge, furry creature with a wolf's head moving on two paws. It was holding another prey in its teeth, this time a sheep. Stunned, the farmer forgot thought he even had a carbine in his hands. He only watched as the werewolf hopped across the field and into the thick forest. It's up to you whether you believe the story or not, but something tells me people from small cities like this have no intention of lying, especially not to their neighbors. Usually, people call a giant spider a separate, large individual that they encounter somewhere on the street or at home. But in this case, everything's completely different. I'm talking about a spider called the Jabba fofi. Translated from the local language, its name means giant spider. Many could see or hear about it from tales and still inhabits the forests of the Congo. This mysterious creature is described as a tarantula-like or bird-eating spider with a brown color and a limb span of up to 5 feet. If suddenly you see pale eggs, their color becomes darker and browner as they mature. According to local residents, in the past, the spider was quite common, but now it's become very rare. Who knows what caused this change? Perhaps people turned out to be stronger and more armed, and since the giant spider preferred to hunt humans, the arthropod population decreased. Now these spiders can only be content with land animals, birds, and various forest inhabitants. It's said that these spiders dig tunnels under the roots of trees and cover them with a large number of leaves, which helps them disguise themselves. Then they weave in almost pretty quickly. Do you think that the forests of the Congo can really be inhabited by such a huge spider, which is not disdain eating even humans? Or are these local stories just to attract attention? Share your opinion in the comments. It would seem that two-headed animals can be found only in myths, fairy tales, and fantasy movies. Today, I'll show you the rarest two-headed animals. How about we start with something as familiar to us as possible? Cats, for example. Among these furry creatures, two-headed, or rather two-faced cats are born sometimes. They're called Janus cats in honor of the two-faced god from Roman mythology. The most famous Janus cat is Frank and Louie, who was born in Massachusetts in 1999. Not only was this cat one of the rarest two-headed creatures in history, but it was also the most unique among them. You'll soon see why. As for the cat himself, technically the creature was one cat, even though there were two cats with two muzzles growing into its body. The animal had one brain, and both of its faces reacted to what was happening around synchronously. What was unique about the animal, apart from him being two-headed, is how long he lived. Typically, two-faced cats, like other animals with two heads, die at an early age, many not even lasting a few days. But Frank and Louie lived a full cat life, dying at the age of 15. This became an unrivaled Guinness Book record. Let's see if he can be beaten by the next cat in this episode, a furball named Duo. It's a fitting name, isn't it? This is another two-headed cat who is now 4 years old. Duo is a little different from Frank and Louie in terms of body features. His defect is called diprosopis. This is when parts of the face are completely duplicated on the head. Duo has two faces and both are fully functioning. Both cats meow and eat separately, and both noses can breathe. Everything's great, but there's a disadvantage in such a feature. Duo can't sort things out with himself. The muzzles are arguing over food or direction of movement, and the cat himself is retarded and poorly developed, unlike ordinary cats. But with such a rare feature, there's nothing to worry about. Do you agree? Tortoise. Tortoises are well-known centenarians, but when it comes to two-headed animals, age is a different story. Even a few months or weeks of life for such creatures is not a bad time. But Janus the tortoise is not going to live such a short life. The two-headed reptile turned 25 years old last September. Not only is he currently the rarest tortoise with two heads, but it's also the oldest tortoise in the world with such an unusual feature. Unlike the cats I showed you, the tortoise is exactly two-headed, with each of his heads functioning separately. Each head has its own brain. Interestingly, this even affects his character. Different animals with different views of the world literally coexist in the same body. For example, the right head has a more dominant character, but the left head is phlegmatic, which is not used to being in the role of a leader. In addition, as in the case of Duo the cat, Janus conflicts with himself. The two heads do not always agree on the direction of movement and try to move in different directions. In addition, Janus physically cannot hide his heads in the shell, as it's done by common tortoises. There's simply no room for two heads. But he has nothing to worry about. The tortoise is not wild and lives under supervision in the Geneva Museum. Snake. It was a similar situation with another reptile. This very rare and unusual snake. It lived in an animal rescue center where it was carefully cared for. This bore fruit, and the two-headed snake was able to live a long life for its peculiarity, as much as 17 years. With this, it defied all the predictions of vets who had predicted its death at an early age. This western rat snake is incredibly unique. Even snake experts, who have seen all the different slithering creatures on the planet, assure. The case of the two-headed reptile is 1 in 100 million. In general, in western rat snakes, one such two-headed individual is born in 100,000 common ones, but only a few manage to live a long life. Such a snake is born when one fertilized egg begins to divide into twins, but they're not completely separated. It's also interesting how this individual was fed. Because its heads were in conflict with each other and competing for food, the staff at the Animal Rescue Center had to do a trick. They covered one head with a cup and fed the other head, then switched. As you can imagine, in the wild, such a two-headed snake wouldn't last long. The heads would simply argue with each other and wouldn't be able to eat properly. Sharks. The case of sharks is particularly interesting. The thing is that in this case, I cannot single out any one individual, all because there are quite a few two-headed sharks, and in the last few years, there are more and more such sharks. Fishermen every now and then catch such mutants and are frightened. Even though two-headed sharks are always small and harmless, the sight is still not soothing. The mutants are often found near the US and in India. Fishermen have also found two-headed sharks in adult sharks when they cut up the fish for sale. But what's wrong with the world? Why are there more and more two-headed sharks? Scientists do not have an exact answer to these questions, but there are several hypotheses. According to the first, fishing has reduced the shark population so much that genetic diversity has decreased, and random mutation has become more often copied. Another hypothesis says that pollution of the world ocean is to blame for everything. There is another hypothesis that says that there have always been a lot of two-headed sharks. It's just that in the last 10 to 15 years, everyone's had phones with cameras, and now fishermen can take pictures of unusual two-headed sharks and post the footage on the internet. Before that, all their stories were perceived as nonsense and tales. No one believed that they really stumbled upon such unusual creatures. Porpoise. The situation is not so rosy with these sea creatures. I mean, the population. If there are a lot of two-headed sharks, then there are no more than 10 porpoises with two heads in the whole world. And unlike sharks, they're caught extremely rarely. The Dutch fishermen were lucky enough to get such a rare and unique creature out of the water, and even then it was already dead. The fishermen quickly took some pictures of the two-headed porpoise, and the body was lowered into the sea, considering that no one would be interested in the dead individual. It's a pity that they didn't think about scientists for whom such individuals are worth their weight in gold, but even the pictures were enough for them to draw conclusions. In their opinion, the porpoise had dicephaly paraplegia, a condition that's a fusion of conjoined twins, where two bodies merge into one, but the heads develop separately. Scientists believe that the porpoise caught by the fishermen died almost immediately after birth. I think there's nothing particularly scary, let alone dangerous, about a two-headed porpoise or a two-headed shark. But what about a large two-headed predator, like an alligator? A man named Justin stumbled upon just such a one in 2014 in Florida. He was walking his dog by a river when he suddenly saw a 6.5-foot long alligator with two heads. Justin took a couple of pictures and got out of there as soon as possible. After all, two toothy jaws are clearly more dangerous than just one. Researchers studied the pictures and said that the alligator is most likely a victim of a mutation of identical twin fetuses. They said that such a phenomenon is quite common among reptiles. However, there were also those who thought that the pictures were fake. What do you think? Can such alligators exist in nature? Share your thoughts in the comments. Calf. And such a miracle has recently appeared in India. In early July, a two-headed calf was born in the state of Uttar Pradesh. It was immediately called God's miracle, and the locals were delighted, not only because of the unusual nature of the animal, but also because in India the birth of such creatures is considered a good sign. Despite the anomaly, the animal is healthy and has a good appetite, which cannot but please the farmer. But it's possible that the joy will not last long because usually calves with this feature live for a few months at most. Let's see if this is the case. I suggest we end this with two-headed creatures and take a look at animals that have only one head, as they should, but they have extra limbs, and it looks no less unusual. Since we already had a calf, why not take a look at a cow? Besides, this cow is very unusual. It has 6 legs and 2 tails. Such creatures are born very rarely. The unique individual lived in Thailand. Its extra limbs grew out of its shoulder and didn't touch the ground. It may seem that they made the cow's life more difficult, but according to the farmer, it wasn't the case. The cow felt good, and an extra pair of legs didn't cause its inconvenience. Probably all because it had extra limbs and a tail from birth, so it got used to living with them. However, it didn't live long, only a couple of years. Forest. Forest has only 1 extra limb. This lamb is 5-legged. The extra leg grows near the left forelimb and almost touches the ground, especially when Forest runs. By the way, he was named after a famous but fictional runner, Forrest Gump. The farmers thought that the extra limb was supposed to get the lamb to love running, and so it turned out. The 5th leg doesn't prevent Forrest from running, he loves it, and most importantly, the animal is completely healthy, which cannot but please. And the final animal of our episode is a very special one. It's a frog, or rather, several frogs. As you can see, they also have extra limbs, but the trick is that they're not born with them. But how? Have frogs learned to grow limbs whenever they want? Not exactly. The whole reason is a parasitic worm of the Riberoia genus. It infects tadpoles of American green tree frogs or Pacific tree frogs and creates an excess of retinoic acid, a form of vitamin A, in their bodies. This is what causes abnormal limb growth. The parasite has thought of everything in detail. Frogs for it are just an intermediate host, and the main target is birds that feed on these amphibians. It's on them that Riberoia parasitizes most actively. Due to the fact that the infected frog doesn't understand how to cope with the new extra legs, it slows down, begins to swim and jump with difficulty, and eventually becomes an easy target for birds. The feathered creature easily eats the prey. The worm enters the bird's body and begins to multiply there. Two-headed animals are certainly impressive. But what if I told you there's scary creatures like this in the world? Keep watching, and you'll see some mystical animals caught on camera. Unicorn. Unicorns are magical horses with a noticeable and very beautiful horn. It makes them immediately easy to distinguish from ordinary horses or other cloven-hoofed animals. Why did I even bring up the question of how to tell them apart if they're fiction? How shall I put it? This video tells us otherwise. It shows people accidentally witnessing a unicorn walking. It was standing alone in a green clearing, minding its own business, unaware that anyone was filming it. It's not clear whether this video is fake or whether the person really filmed the unicorn, but many factors which cannot be ignored make you believe in a miracle. The fact is that historically the homeland of magical creatures is India, and that's where the man filmed this creature. By the way, do you even know how long ago, according to scientists, unicorns existed? It was somewhere around 400 years BC. Chinese mythology attributes only positive qualities to Qilin, as it's called locally. It symbolizes wisdom, justice, and fairness, brings good news, and is able to distinguish between good and evil. In any case, if the video is true, it bodes well. And if it's a fake, that's okay. Chupacabra. People have known about this animal for a long time, but encountering it is still a challenge. After all, this creature makes surgically precise attacks on livestock, on the most defenseless of dainty creatures, which are unable to fight back a real predator and disappears without a trace. It's virtually impossible to locate. However, eyewitnesses from Mississippi still came across something similar to the legendary and mystical creature. Of course, its silhouette and behavior immediately reminded everyone of the legendary chupacabra. It's not hard to imagine how this creepy creature can sneak into a farm, make neat punctures with its long and razor-sharp teeth, and feed on some blood. The fact that the night hunter looks like a wolf also fits here. The monster moves on 4 paws but can stand on 2 limbs as well. Its skin is devoid of fur, and it has a crest of sharp spines on its back. Basically, everything fits except for the spines. But who knows these chupacabras? Write in the comments, what do you think about this? Did people actually film a real chupacabra? Or maybe it was someone else? Or is this video a fake? Oh wait, I almost forgot. Not so long ago, another frightening footage appeared on the internet. This time it was taken in Argentina. Something which resembles the chupacabra was shot there. By the way, this something looked almost the same as the video in the first story. As the locals say, the chupacabra attacked 2 dogs at once and dealt with them as easily as possible. Its prey was not some useless breed, but a pit bull terrier and a German shepherd dog. Again, whether this is true or not is up to you. If someone can still doubt the existence of the chupacabra because the only evidence for it is various kinds of videos, then the following story has solid evidence. I'm talking about the nearest ancestor of the dinosaurs, Tiliocrator. Its appearance has been reconstructed by scientists by finding remains from around the world. The fossils suggest that this creature lived some 245 million years ago. It was the missing link in the evolution between archosaurs and dinosaurs. Ancient reptile archosaurs were the ancestors of crocodiles on one side and dinosaurs and birds on the other. But if from archosaurs to crocodiles there was a clear evolutionary line with transitional forms of creatures, then in the direction of the dinosaurs there was a gap in the evolutionary line. Dinosaurs appeared on Earth as if from nowhere. The only thing that scientists could do is to recreate the hypothetical ancestors of dinosaurs, strongly resembling a plucked chicken running quite fast on 2 legs. As you understand, this very Tiliocrator was just that. Presumably it could be several meters tall and weighed more than 220 pounds. This creature, like a crocodile, could swim in water and swiftly capture absolutely any prey, swallowing it alive. At the same time, Tiliocrator was perfectly capable of dealing with many terrestrial creatures on land. In any case, although its remains have been found by archaeologists and scientists have reconstructed a presumed skeleton, people have no accurate information and are unlikely to ever get it. No matter how you look at it, 245 million years have passed. Kappa. It's a name many of you know thanks to a popular clothing brand. But no, don't rush to skip this story. There will be no commercials now. In fact, it's also the name of a demon that lives in Japan. Kappa is the name of a creature that lives in rivers and lakes. It's both a dangerous monster and evil joker. Locals were very afraid of him in ancient times and even invented special ways to placate him. Today, however, the picture has changed and people somehow find Kappa to be a sweet and kind creature. Let's be thankful that at least they don't have him at home. It's unclear if he was filmed in this footage or if it was someone else, but the creature definitely looks a lot like him. Well, while you're still looking at this handsome fellow, I'll tell you one possible theory for the origin of the Kappa legends. It may have something to do with a sad ancient Japanese tradition. Poor families who had newborn children often threw them into rivers because they couldn't afford to take care of them. Others were told by the elders that something called Kappa lived in the water, and if they were too close to the shore, the mysterious creature could grab them and drag them down to the depths with it. As you can imagine, this was done so that children wouldn't go to the water and see other children who had been sent to Kingdom Come. Hast's eagle. Who would have thought that before, not only on land or in water, but also right in the air, there could be a threat? And sometimes this threat was much bigger than that from the known to many megalodon or some huge lizard. The fact is that the Hast's eagle, as the ancient giant eagle was called, could knock down anyone. The eagle was named after the scientist who first discovered its remains. As the man suggested, the bird had standard size, but at some point, because of its special diet, it took a different developmental path and mutated. To give you a better understanding, this raptor was vastly superior to all of its modern relatives. It could weigh up to 31 pounds and had a wingspan of almost 10 feet. Paleontologists believed that the Haast's eagle had no potential enemies at all. It was too clever, fast, agile, and cunning. And lastly, I'll give you an illustrative example. The well-known golden eagle can safely hunt a wolf. Its talon's compression force allows it to do so. In the case of Haast's eagle, its paws were stronger. They were very powerful. In girth, they were like a human leg. And the talons could clench with twice the force of a golden eagle. And that wasn't its main weapon. It turned out to be a beak. It was up to 7 inches long. Thanks to its powerful neck, the raptor could strike with it like a sledgehammer. Dobby has no master. Dobby is a free elf, said the protagonist of this video and leisurely left the room where Harry Potter lived. Sorry, but that's the only way to explain what was going on in this video. The Colorado resident posted this footage, and the mystical creature on it looks an awful lot like Dobby. Do you all remember this cute, kind-hearted elf from the legendary movie series? Don't you? By the way, write in the comments, which part of Harry Potter do you like the most? Megalania. Did you order the world's biggest lizard? No? Well, it doesn't really care. It feels like it's the ruler of this world and can do whatever it wants. Although it's more accurate to say that it could do whatever it wanted because, luckily for us, the giant is long thought to be extinct. Although no complete skeleton of Megalania has been found yet, scientists believe that it could reach up to 30 feet in length and weigh more than 2 tons. Of course, such a creature couldn't help but be at the top of the food chain. It hunted everyone in general. It's assumed that, like its closest monitor lizard relatives, Megalania possessed toxic saliva. Most likely, its hunting method was similar to that of Komodo dragons. It was an ambush predator that sharply knocked its prey down and bit it. Its only relative weakness was its speed of movement. Our giant lizard didn't run that fast, only 6.5 to 10 feet per second. Although I did the math and that's actually not slow at all. And if you consider that it was even several times hardier than crocodiles, then it turns out to be some kind of Usain Bolt of the reptile world. I don't think there's a single person on Earth who has never heard of the Kraken in their life. Northern sailors from ancient times described terrible monsters that resembled a cephalopod. It was from then that the legends and tales got started, and the Kraken took on a much more popular and terrifying character. According to sailors' descriptions, this creature was the size of a floating island and had such power that it could drag the most unwieldy warship to the bottom with its tentacles. Of course, we can write this off as mere fiction. And besides, if such a creature was real, wouldn't scientists have found any traces of it? But here, the story takes on a different, much more curious character. Many scientists are convinced that the Kraken still exists today. It's just that people who encounter huge squids don't attribute anything mystical to them. What do you think of this theory? I think it's very interesting. That's all, guys. Do you believe in the Kraken's existence? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and see you later.